This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast right here on Most Valuable Podcast, one-stop shop for everything in college football, college basketball, everything in the world of college sports. And Brandon, we got a jam-packed show. I didn't think we were done with the NBA draft, but I thought for a second, oh, you know what? Nothing big's going to happen in NBA draft news, right? Nothing could. The draft is only 3 weeks away. Like, what big things could happen? Then Jontay Porter said, I'm pulling my name out. So we're going to talk about Jontay Porter going back to Mizzou. Then we're going to dive into the world of college football. Take a little bit of a look at Joe Burrow, his transfer to LSU. What does that mean for them? And then we're also going to look at Texas football. This is one that I've had on the back burner for a while, like before Sean and I were going to talk about it one of the weeks you were gone, and it just kind of went to the back burner. So we're pulling it out. Will this be a big year for Tom Herman and Texas football? And before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning. I almost forgot about it. I'll be honest. I almost went right into Jontay Porter, but a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning. If you like what we do, you want to be a guest on the show, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. The Onside Kick just had Patrick on. And if you want to be like him, you want to be like Bill and Jake, who were on the fast break.
Bill, he must be new.
He is very new.
Welcome, Bill.
First
Welcome,
podcast
Billy.
ever for Bill Ward, our newest patron. If you want to be like Bill and all our patrons, go check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Also, if you want an MVP t-shirt, neither of us are wearing it. I got my Bailey t-shirt on today. But you can go get the MVP t-shirt. That store link is down below in the description. And then the last two things, mostvaluablepodcast.com is where you catch MVP each and every day. And I looked this up today. If you want to go rate, please go rate and review the podcast on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. Our rating for the Primetime Podcast, it's a 4.5 out of 5, which is really good. I'd like it to be closer to that 5, but whatever. I can see how some people may give us a 4, but we still only have that one review where apparently we're SEC good old boys. And I mean, we're kind of talking about the SEC today with Mizzou and LSU, but at least we're hitting that 4.5 on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. So go get that closer to that 5-star rating that we really, really want here at MVP. But let's jump into a little bit of SEC basketball news. Not really, more NBA draft news. Jontay Porter, younger brother, or you could say, is he younger brother? No, older brother. I don't know. Brother to Michael Porter Jr. says, you know what? I love the draft process. I'm pulling out. I'm going to be coming back to Mizzou. And the statement that I have here from BleacherReport.com is
the younger
from
brother, just
the younger brother. From Mizzou head coach says, we're excited that Jontay will return. He had a great experience going through the pre-draft process, got the feedback that he needed to do what is best for him, and he will learn from it to improve in all areas of his game. Jontay has the potential to make a big jump in his freshman season, and he'll be a great leader for us on and off the court next year. Brandon, I'm going to ask you, is it a smart move for Jontay Porter to come back to Mizzou?
It's a great decision. This is a great decision. We talked about it a little bit last week when we did our final NBA big board, and I had him.
Then we were unsure.
I had him in mind. You did not have him in yours. You even said before we came onto the podcast today that the reason you didn't have him in yours in the last couple was because you just didn't see him staying. In terms of staying and continuing through with the draft process,
to be honest,
and everything like that.
I didn't want another Daniel Gafford situation where we had it in, then we get the numerous comments of he's staying in school. We got it. Jontay Porter wasn't on my big board because of it.
And I kept him because I think that he certainly had talent, and he probably would have been most likely an early second-round pick. But I think that now with him going back to college, he has an opportunity to be probably a mid-level first-round pick. And I believe that after what happened at the Combine, he comes in, he has the highest body fat percentage of anybody in the field. He's one of the least explosive jumpers in the field. Those types of things, those aren't going to help you. Those aren't going to help you. And especially, I just want to read a quote from his dad. One of the things that he was saying, he said, make no mistake, this is a man's league. If you're going to do it, you've got to really go and do it. You can't be half-hearted about this. And I think that's the bigger thing, is you can't be half-hearted. You also can't be I don't want to say that he didn't put his full effort into doing it, but you have to be 100% effort as well. Like, if you're ready to get into the NBA, you're going in with the big dogs, and they could eat you alive and spit you right out, and no one will hear about you again. And you don't want that to happen, especially if you're Jontay Porter and you know that you've got talent, and you want to be able to see that used and utilized to the most effective ways that it can be. Also, you want to be able to get a good contract. You don't want the team to be the one to kind of win on the contract side. If anything, you want to be able to have a pretty even, kind of split. Okay, the team's going to get a little bit, but you're definitely going to get yours too. So I think that he's got a really good opportunity now to go back to slim down, build muscle, get faster, get bigger, get stronger, do all those things, improve on the numbers that he had from last year. Pretty much a bench player last season, coming off the bench in 26 of the 33 games that MU played. He's got a real opportunity to, I think, improve on his points, improve on his rebounding, get better around the rim, and just become a better overall player. I think we'll see that next season.
Well, and I mean, the thing that I look at is it a smart move? Yes. Now, if this was Michael Porter we're talking about, no, this is not a smart move, because coming into the year, obviously not many people were talking about Jontay Porter, and that was because Michael Porter was up here, Jontay Porter was down here. But like we've said throughout the entire season, the injury to Michael Porter was actually the most beneficial thing to Jontay Porter. He was able to actually play 24.5 minutes per game this year. The thing I want to see more from Jontay, and maybe this isn't the most popular decision, whereas rebounding's going to be a big thing. He only averaged at the college level about 7 rebounds, just under 7 a game. What I want to see is, and this is solely a stat sheet thing, I want to see more points per game. If you want to crack a lottery player, yes, you got to have, like we saw Miles Bridges in the draft process, he really slimmed down after Sean was kind of ragging on him in our bus segment or our wing segment, one of the two, for being kind of not fat, but a little husky for a wing and for a basketball player. I want to see not just him slim down this year, but also, can you give me more than 9.9 points per game? Because if I'm going to take you early in the draft to crack where, because like he was projected, I want to say maybe 19 at the highest, maybe like the late teens at the highest, but more so that 20 through mid 20 range. So early 20s, late 20s is kind of where he was sitting. And if I'm going to take you any higher than 20, you either have to be really good at something, like be a 3-and-D player to where I can say, you know what, I'm not going to get a ton of points out of you, but you're going to lock down someone defensively, or you have to be a player that is so well-rounded to where scoring has to be a part of that. Now, just 9.9 points per game, good for a freshman year, but if you're going to increase minutes next year being a sophomore, I want to see that get into the double digits, maybe give me about 12 points per game at the least.
Well, I think that this is where he's got that opportunity to become that well-rounded player, and he knows what he's got to focus on. And I think by him going through this draft process and talking with some of the different teams and some of the different team officials and stuff like that, I think that's very helpful. Now you have specific information from certain teams, what they want to see from you. People who are going through all the drills and stuff with you, what you need to improve on, what you need to get better on. And we saw it from last season. He's got to be better around the rim. You are the team leader, yes, in rebounds. That's not good for Missouri, though. If you're the team leader with about 7 rebounds per game, that ain't good. So I think that you need to get better there, stronger around the rim. You're good defensively in terms of blocking shots and everything like that, but a lot of his points were coming from farther out. They weren't coming from really close near the basket.
Yeah.
He was a 3-point shooter too, 36 point, I think 4% from beyond the arc.
You're exactly correct.
That's pretty good. If he can improve in that he's got to improve in that region. And like what you said, what's been one of the biggest knocks, and I'm not trying to compare it's apples to oranges here. No. But Mo Bamba, what's the knock against Mo Bamba is that he doesn't have enough offense. He doesn't bring enough offense
he's
to his game.
reconstructing his shot.
But what I'm saying though is even take that away, it's continuing to be the continuous theme of you can't build around a defensive player. And I'm not saying that Jontay Porter is a defensive player. And like I said, I didn't want to make the comparison that it's him to Bamba, but it's what has been the knock. You don't want that same knock to be against you that you're pretty good defensively, but there's just not enough there offensively to see you move up the charts in terms of a big board or in terms of the draft next season, where a lot of people are calling next season to be the 2019 draft to be one of the weaker classes that we've seen, but especially when you compare it to this year's class, it's going to be weaker.
Well, and I mean, I'm going to look back to the last full mock draft that we did over at the Fast Break, where we were thinking Jontay would be. Sean had him about in the 16 range, so just outside of the lottery. However, this one, 4.0 was so long ago. We did two after that were just the lottery. Jontay at 16. I had him at 21. Dave went ahead and had him at 17. So, our range, 15, 16, all the way down to 21. And where my range was where I saw him as an early 20s guy. The thing that I was originally going to say is at 36.4. Originally, I was going to say I want that to be increased a little bit. However, the one thing I looked at is league averages, and this is league average for everyone, not just a 4, because being a 6'11 forward, you're not going to play the 3, you're going to play the 4. You're going to be my power forward for any team that is drafting you. The league average for everyone, though, this year in the NBA for the 3 ball is a 36.2 percentage, and that's gone up from just over the past few years. The year before it was 35.8, then 35.4, 35, and then it was 36 back in 2013, 2014. So we're going back up. If that league average then goes up again this year, and let's say it's at 37, you want to be, it's at the 4 position, it's what do you want to be known for? Yeah. Do you want to be that, and I'm not comparing him to this, but do you want to be more of that Kristaps Porzingis type player where you're kind of a unicorn and can do everything? You can rebound, you can shoot from distance, you can finish at the basket. Or do you want to be a guy that we talked about this process, Robert Williams, where no one's talking about his offense, nobody's talking about his defense. The main thing that we're talking about is, man, he's a hustle player. He's going to go get the loose balls. He's going to give you energy out there. But that kind of guy is like Robert Williams with what he is. His cap in this draft is maybe a lottery pick, depending on where does Wendell Carter go or what happens with the wings or what trades we see early on in the draft. Like, Robert Williams isn't a guy that's going to crack the top 10. He'll crack the lottery, and that's his ceiling for his draft stock. So for Jontay, what do you want to be? Do you want to add that three-pointer to your game more? Because, like, with his averages, yeah, he shot 36% from the field, almost 37 or 36.5, but he was only averaging about 3 attempts per game. So are we going to see, if I take more attempts, that average goes down? Or are you going to work on it? Hey, I'm taking more attempts, maybe like 5 or 6, and I'm making like 40, 42. If he was at 40% shooting from 3, he'd be great, because then it's like, all right, I can put you at the stretch 4 at the next level.
Yeah, and I think that that's where he's going to, by going back, you're going to define yourself as who you are, what you want to be known as, who you want to be as a player. That's going to really help him here. And what I think is going to be great for him now is that they're not going to be talking about his brother. They're not going to be talking about Michael Porter.
No comparisons at all. He's in the NBA.
That is nice. That's nice for him. Your brother is off. Michael Porter is off in the NBA doing his thing, and it's the Jontay Porter show now. It's not the Michael Porter. Oh, and there's Jontay Porter as well. So I think it's nice for him that he's going to be able to kind of be in his own spotlight and see where he gets to be now, as I think a lot of people will turn to him as being the next leader of this Mizzou team. They lost a lot of offense. A couple of guys leaving at the end of this year. Obviously, Michael Porter's one of them, but he wasn't... I wouldn't really put him in that conversation. He's one of the guys they lost, but he really wasn't the big piece because he didn't play most of the season. But they lost a lot of their offensive guys. So now Jontay has a really good opportunity to become a scorer and to work on his, I think, rebounding ability and everything to become that well-rounded player. And this is I feel like an almost ideal situation for him. He's made a smart move by going back. I think his dad completely agrees. I think most fans of the game would probably agree that this is a good move for him to go back. And it's going to get him most likely a bigger payday when it comes down to it. And you have really everything at your fingertips. You can be the star of this team. People will look at you. You're going to be on a bigger stage. You've already kind of gone through the NBA draft process. This next year when you do it, you're going to know exactly what to expect. You know what to work on. This is a really, really ideal situation for him. I think it's a smart move on his part.
Well, and before I make the point to what you said, the one thing I was looking at is I've got three guys kind of do my last kind of nail with the three-point percentage, because I know someone's already gone out and commented or is typing it right now about like, guys, you're harping on the 36%, but 36% is not that bad. And it's not. Lauri Markkanen, who was a rookie this year for the Bulls, shot, 36.2. So a worse percentage by 0.2 than Jontay did in college. However, NBA 3, so there's that, but also Lauri Markkanen was averaging almost twice as many threes. I almost said double as many. Twice as many threes as Jontay was. And he's hitting a fraction of a percent lower than you. Then you've got the guy I mentioned, Kristaps Porzingis. No comparison there, but if you look at it, averaging about 2 more threes per game than Jontay, and he's hitting about 3% more, 39.5. However, Kristaps is a guy, got injured this year, only played 48 games. Also, he does everything. He rebounds, he shoots from 3, he finishes around the basket, plays phenomenal defense. He's a unicorn. And then there's the last guy, and this guy is the true vet at this point, Kevin Love. He's a guy that, only averaged about 2.5 more threes than Jontay, but this is what I would strive for if I was Jontay. I would strive for a 41% clip from beyond the arc, and this was the best year that K. Love has shot from 3 since his 3rd year in the league. Like, this is the only time he's been over 40 since that 3rd year. 37.3 last year was his best since his last year in Minnesota. That's what I'm striving for the ceiling if I'm Jontay. Like, I want to hone in on that 3 because even at the 4, that's where the NBA is. The NBA is going more towards the 3. So if you can stretch it out, have that range, an NBA team is going to like that. The thing that I was thinking on your point is it almost makes me think of Miles Bridges in a way. And with Miles Bridges, I'm not comparing it. They're vastly different. If he was in the same shoes that Miles Bridges was, I would say go to the NBA. If he was a top 10 prospect, if he was in the lottery, cemented as a lottery status, what the hell are you doing? Go to the NBA. But because he's out of the lottery, like I said, us at the Fast Break had him between 16 and 21. It's a pretty big range for a pro. Because that's your range, you can go back to school and have a better opportunity to up your draft stock for next year than a Miles Bridges, who was a top 10 pick, depending on which mock draft you looked at last year. Now you look at it, he's end of the lottery, fallen out of the lottery for some people. Like, that could also happen to Jontay, although I don't think it's as big of a risk as it was with Miles Bridges when he came back last year.
Well, exactly. I think people seeing Miles Bridges go back last year were surprised and going, what are you doing?
And he wanted to win a championship.
Whereas, and he didn't do it. But whereas with Jontay Porter, he's going back, there aren't many people who are surprised or disagree with that move.
Mm-hmm. No,
so I think again, like I've been saying, and we've been kind of talking about it for a little bit now, since it was kind of reported that he could be going back. It's smart. This goes back to the conversation that I think we talked about with Matt when he was on, and we talked about, do you think it's a good thing that guys are able to go through this whole process and then be able to come back? And I think it kind of speaks to it's helpful for them, and it's good the way that it's kind of set up right now in terms of being able to know that you can go through all of this and then say, okay, I don't feel, after everything that I've gotten, after everything that I've gone through and how I've kind of placed in terms of the different skill sets and tests and everything like that, and what teams have said to me, I got to go back, but I know what to work on, and I'll be back next year. I think that's helpful. Here's
what I'm going to ask, and this will be the last thing we ended on before we move into college football, is going off of that point, though. You look at interviews with a guy you brought up, Mo Bamba. Now, he's going to be, in my mind, a top 5. He's going to be one of the top 5 picks in this draft.
He should be.
Going to be, depending on, does he go to the Mavs at 5? Does a team take him in the top 3? Or, like the news that came out today that I hope we talk about on the fast break this week, is a team like the Celtics who has interest in him and who could trade up and draft him in the top 3. Is it easier for a player like that to come out and say, well, like when they asked him on the jump about like coming out and not going back to school or his time at Texas, he was like, you know what? The thing that was really hard was like, yeah, I wanted to work on my craft, but I knew I had, I have a test the next day, or I got to finish this paper because it's due at such and such clock the next day. Is it easier for a guy like that to say that and then go, man, I love being able to work on me right now, go to the next level and just focus on me and my craft, compared to a guy like Jontay, who there's going to be a contingency out there that's like, I don't care where you're drafted. If you're a first-round pick, go to the draft, because even if you don't play a lot at that next level, that first year, all you have to do is focus on yourself. Focus on you, focus on your craft, and you don't have to worry about the school. Like Cardell Jones, we ain't here to play school. Is it easier for a guy like Mo Bamba to say that, but for a guy like Jontay, I can't really do that because the money difference is not the same, 21st overall compared to top 3, I'm going to go back to school to try to get more money next year?
Well, I think it's kind of one of those things where...
Is it a catch-22, basically?
It could be. Just like there's so many people, and this is vastly different. I'll start out by saying that there's a lot of guys, when you go to like the MLB, and there's guys working in AA and AAA, and they are not being paid well. They are having to hustle. But I think it's probably the same thing when you're looking at the G League or the D League or what, like I said before, whatever they want to call themselves today.
And it's not even as hammered out as the MLB Farm League.
They're not getting paid handsomely to be there. They're having to grind much harder because they know that if they drop out from this, they may not be making it back again. And so I think when you look at that and you see, okay, 21, let's say, go off of kind of what you said, 21's where I'm going to be at. I'm not going to be getting the money of a guy who's at 5 or a guy who's inside the top 5 or a guy who's even at 10. I should probably go back and hope that when I come back next year, hopefully bigger, faster, stronger, and a larger, wider skill set, that I'm possibly going to be at 10, at 12, getting more money, feeling more comfortable in terms of that.
Just to kind of, because we said 21, I looked up last year's 21st pick in the draft was Terrence Ferguson. And what I wanted to pull up was his contract really quick. So Terrence Ferguson was drafted last year, 21st overall. He's got paid $1.7 million this year, $2.1 million next year. Then it goes team options, $2.4 million, $3.9 million. So at the most, you're making $3.9 a mil, but that's if you get to that fourth year.
And let me tell you, now I know that is not crumbs, but that is small money compared to a guy who's going to be drafted number 1 overall or in the top 5.
Well,
that is crumbs then. So I think that it's vastly different. And when you have to pay your agent and you have to pay this person and that person, you're not seeing in the millions anymore.
Well, just to give you kind of a range, Jason Tatum, J-Tay, who was taken at 3, this year made $5.6 million compared to that 1 point something. 6.7 next year, then 7.8, 9.8. So I mean, yeah, still pennies on the dime compared to like, you know, Gordon Hayward, who made $29 million this year with his contractor, like LeBron, who's got a max deal. But still, $3 to like $4 million is a big difference between 3 overall and 21st overall. But what I want to do is turn the conversation on to you guys. Camera's probably going to die, but whatever. I'm going to turn it on to you guys. What do you think about Jontay going back to school? Is it a smart decision? Is it a bad decision? I know we targeted mostly about Jontay, but the one thing I want to also ask is if you're a Mizzou fan out there, what does this do for Mizzou basketball? Because they were a team made the tournament. Some people think that, oh, they could have gone a little further or further in the tournament period if they weren't focused about getting Michael Porter back on the court. So what do you think this also means for the Tigers next season as well? Let's move on, though, into our next topic, Brandon, and we're taking a look at Joe Burrow, former quarterback of The Ohio State University. Everyone thought, oh, could he be the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes this year? No, not too fast. As soon as there was an open competition and he thought, I might not be the starter, he said he was going to transfer. The graduate transfer finally decided, and last Friday night, I believe, or the Friday before last podcast, so 2 weeks ago, he decided that he will play his last 2 seasons in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the home of the LSU Tigers. So LSU getting Joe Burrow. It's not for sure that he's going to, Ed Orgeron said there's still an open competition for the quarterbacks. And at the beginning of the spring, he said that he doesn't expect, you can do it in your great impersonation, that he does not expect any of the quarterbacks to transfer. That may change now that Burrow's a part of the situation. What does this mean for LSU this year?
Well, so whoever ends up the starting quarterback is going to be replacing Danny Etling, who went in the 7th round of the NFL draft to the New England Patriots.
So he's going to get a ring.
Yeah, by sitting down on the bench. So it's going to be an open quarterback competition here, too. It's going to be going against sophomore Miles Brennan, junior Justin McMillan, and redshirt freshman Lowell Narcisse. So I think that it's interesting. I always find this to be interesting, that you leave a spot where you're not certain if you're going to be the starting quarterback to go to another spot where you're not certain if you're going to be the starting quarterback. I always find that to be funny. But this is what I think for an LSU quarterback now going forward. Whoever is the quarterback, the starting quarterback, whoever they go with, has got to bring fire and pop to the position. They've never had that. I've never felt or seen that with Danny Etling. Never. Danny Etling, in my mind, and I griped about him all the time. Anytime we talked about it, it's like, oh, gosh, not Etling. But this is why. Because he is the embodiment of a game manager. He won't do any more, and he won't do any less. He'll just manage it. He'll make sure that the handoff gets to the running back. He'll make sure that he has the 5-yard pass. He'll throw 16 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions and about 25 to 2,600 yards. But nothing more. Nothing more. And you don't usually win that way. You do when you have a running back like Darius Geis. That's nice.
But he's in the NFL.
But he's now in the NFL. And you have, in my opinion, with LSU, you have kind of a question mark at running back too. You got a lot of guys that you could go with. And are they going to carry you? And if not, the quarterback position has to. And you need a guy who's not going to be afraid to stretch the field, something that, again, you never saw with Danny Etling. So it's that, to me, is going to be really interesting. Burrow is the guy who comes in with the most experience out of all these guys on 39 pass attempts. It's ridiculous. The most experience out of all of them with 39 pass attempts.
The thing I always liked about Burrow as a transfer is, where is he coming from? He's coming from an Urban Meyer team.
That's it.
Like, just being, I don't care if you only threw 39 passes. You were in that system. You were coached by Urban Meyer. Hopefully, at least something has seeped through. And I don't know if he's got a thick skull, but hopefully something seeped through that skull into your brain, and you absorbed something from Urban Meyer.
And you sat behind J.T. Barrett.
Yeah.
You sat behind a really good quarterback who was there a long time.
Who had to sit behind Cardell Jones.
Exactly.
And Braxton Miller.
So I think that you were there, and you were there for a good amount of time. You learned a lot. Like you said, you should have been able to soak up a lot. And you saw a lot. You were able to get coached by not even just the coach, but the players, the Cardell Jones themselves, the J.T. Barretts themselves, and actually learn from them. So I think right now I would give the upper leg to Burrow, not only because he has a little bit more experience, but also because he's coming from a system where you would like to think that he knows a thing or two and then can display that.
Here's the thing that I'm thinking about is, so when the news of his transfer came out, everybody was saying that, oh, you know what, he's going to go to Cincinnati. He's going to stay within the state of Ohio. And my thought was, looking at some of the other teams like Nebraska, like LSU, like Florida, my mind went, why the hell would you pick Cincinnati over any of those other three teams, no matter what their quarterback situation is? Like, why would you go from Ohio State to a non-Power 5 school? I didn't understand that. So, like, when I heard people say, like, oh, the early favorite is Cincinnati, and that's probably where he's going to sign, I went, he would be an idiot to do that. Like, he would be a blatant idiot to go ahead and do that. But looking at the three that I thought that could have nailed him, two were in the SEC, one was in the Big Ten. I want to start with the Big Ten one first. Nebraska, because Sean and I talked about them one of the weeks you were on your sabbatical, and the thing that we mentioned was one of the biggest question marks in the whole Scott Frost turning this team around is quarterback. They have a big question at quarterback, and right now it looks like it's going to be, in my mind, either Andrew Bouch, or however you say his name, or Patrick O'Brien, the redshirt freshman. I think Burrow could have came into that situation, and possibly Andrew's a transfer sophomore, so he's new to the situation. And O'Brien is new to the situation because Scott Frost is a new head coach to Nebraska. So it's a new system. He could have went into Nebraska. That was the easiest job to win. However, the question is, if you under Scott Frost go ahead and win that side of the conference, yeah, you got to beat Wisconsin, but that's a story for a different day. Do you want to go to the same conference as the school you transferred? Plus, there's the whole thing of, I don't know exactly, maybe someone else does, if Ohio State blocked him from going to the Big Ten. But if they didn't, Nebraska, to me, I was like, oh, that was a job he could win. Question is, would I want to go up against the team I was leaving, a team that would probably beat me if I played them against Nebraska? Then there were the other two, LSU and Florida. And to me, it came down to the quarterback situation because, yeah, we listed off, three quarterbacks that are already in an open competition at LSU. But the thing is, none of those are named the starter. And I think the decision basically came down to that. Because if you look at Florida, Dan Mullen coming in, it's his first year. But let's be completely honest. If you're Joe Burrow, and I'm going to put you in the shoes of Joe Burrow, who do you think you have a better chance of upending or kind of beating out for a quarterback competition? Justin McMillan, Miles Brennan, or Lowell Narcissi, is that how you say his name?
I said Narcisse.
Narcisse.
But someone will yell at us and we'll figure it out.
We're going to go with Narcisse then to be consistent. Or are you going to walk into Florida and beat out Felipe Franks? Which situation would you see yourself if you were Joe Burrow being the starting quarterback? LSU or Florida?
Yeah, it's LSU.
It's LSU. That's why he chose LSU. And the reason why he didn't choose Cincinnati is because he's going to a conference in the SEC that is a tough conference, and he's actually going to have a chance to play for something in his final 2 years. That's even if he stays the 2 years.
And I think to go to the point to Florida is that Dan Mullen, Florida's in very, very capable hands now with Dan Mullen as their head coach. I like Dan Mullen a lot. I think he knows his stuff. I think he's going to bring a good culture back to Florida of winning and getting rid of the noise that they had for a number of years there. But right now, LSU is, I think, in a better situation. Right now, Ed Orgeron has those guys playing really well, and I know that we can say that you lose a couple of guys, you lose a stronghold of Darius Geist there on the offensive side, but
they usually when they lost Leonard Fournette, we thought they were dead in the water.
Exactly. You just have to find that next guy and wait for that next guy to show them the bursts of talent, and you go, all right, there he is. So I think Ed Orgeron has these guys in a really good spot and a good position, and they actually had a strong team last year. I think that Burrow makes the right pick, the right move to come here because, like you said, you have a better shot of beating out three guys who none of them were locked into it anyways than you do against Felipe Franks, who has a good experience under his belt. He got it last year. He made some big plays, had some big wins. Fans like him, and I know that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it would not be necessarily working in favor of Burrow as this situation is.
You want to know what I just found out? You know who's on the LSU team as a running back? Leonard Fournette. Do you know who Leonard Fournette is? It's the younger brother of Leonard Fournette.
Leonard.
Could you imagine, and this is just off the topic.
Leonard and Leonard.
Is if your name is Leonard, Lanard, Fournette, and your brother was named Leonard Fournette. It's too similar, am I right?
It's too similar.
It's basically the same name, but they have Leonard Fournette, so maybe they got little Fournette there to be their starting running back, and he's going to be the diamond in the rough for him because he's got the Fournette genes pumping through him.
Could you imagine that, though? Hey, Leonard. No, Leonard, not Leonard.
Oh, could you imagine? They'd always get confused in the house. But, I mean, with Ed Orgeron, because you brought him up, like you said, they are in capable hands. He was last year's second season, 6-2 the first year overall, 9-4 last year. The thing is we'll say, just for the sake of argument, because we're talking about Joe Burrow, let's say he's the starter. Does he put them over the hump, though? Is this LSU team going to be able to... Because to me, it's going to be a three-dog race again between Auburn, Alabama, and LSU. Does Joe Burrow, if he wins the starting job, put them over the hump? I know it's a team sport, but does he put them over the hump to compete with an Alabama or an Auburn, or is this another year where, you know what, Tua's going to win the job in Alabama, he's going to be the best quarterback, Alabama's going to run away with this thing?
Well, Ricky, I can't tell you for certain because he's only thrown for 287 yards and 2 touchdowns in his entire 39 attempts.
Put on the tinfoil, give me a prediction.
But what I'd like to say is that if you have a quarterback that, like I said, has the fire, has some pop, who can stretch the field because their new offensive coordinator, Steve Ensminger, I believe is his last name, he wants to do a lot of 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. So not as much ground and pound what they've gone with Fournette and then with Geist. So if they're going and moving towards more of an aerial attack, whoever they have as the starting quarterback, and let's say it's Burrow, is going to have to be the guy, is going to have to be the man that puts them over the hump, that wins the games for them, that makes the big throws, that makes the big plays. And if you can have a quarterback... Now, Alabama, where do they struggle? They struggle, and they did last year, against teams that had really good, competent, solid quarterbacks.
Like, look at Georgia. I know Georgia had the double running backs too, but Jacob Eason, competent quarterback.
Absolutely. They struggled against Auburn with a competent quarterback. Alabama, if tested against a good quarterback, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying it's always more of an interesting game when the quarterback on the other side of the ball knows how to, I don't want to say
win the game,
shred Alabama's defense, but pick them apart slowly but surely. And I think that is what will help LSU, and that is what will put them over the hump. Because the minute a team starts to be able to fairly, which it always doesn't seem fair when Alabama plays a team, but to fairly compete with Alabama is the minute that then they're beatable and someone's figured them out. And I think that's when it's like, okay, we've got it. But it's with a quarterback. It's with a solid quarterback who can move the ball down the field. That's the only way.
I'll use this as the example. Look at Clemson. 3 straight years Alabama and Clemson had met. 2 were in the national championship, right? Yeah, I know they went 1-1, 1-1 the other, but that Clemson team that won had Deshaun Watson. Last year's team didn't have Deshaun Watson, didn't have, to me, the quarterback that is anywhere near Deshaun Watson.
No.
Alabama walked in, beat them 24-6. A joke of a playoff game, of a semifinal game.
It was.
Just turned it off. Just don't need to watch this. And then you got Jacob Eason. They take him to overtime, and we all know how that ended. I have a feeling that LSU, no matter who the starting quarterback is, I kind of have the fear, and maybe this is me as an outsider, not an LSU fan and LSU diehard, I just have the worry of no matter who it is, even if it's Joe Burrow, whoever wins the quarterback job, it's not going to be enough, and you're still third behind Auburn and Alabama. Like that, it's like that. Just the division is Auburn and Alabama will fight it out. Whoever wins the Iron Bowl moves on to the conference championship. Like, I still have that fear because I don't think that any of these quarterbacks necessarily. Now, like you said, Joe Burrow's only 39 snaps is what you said, or 39
pass attempts.
That's all we've seen from him. Yes, it's a small sample size, so we don't know. He could go out there and the first 2 games, he lights it up, and it's like, all right, we've got someone that could maybe knock down Auburn and Alabama. But at this point, we haven't seen enough to where my thought has not changed that I don't have LSU third in this division.
Well, here's the thing, too, is that look at the Big 12 and look at their quarterbacks. What were their quarterbacks?
Yeah.
You had Mason Rudolph. You had Baker Mayfield. You had, I'll even put in Sam Ellinger and Shane Buechele from Texas. You can put in, who else? I'm missing a big one, I think. Who else is out there?
You're looking at the Big 12. You had Baker Mayfield.
I said Baker and
Mason,
Rudolph.
I'm trying to think quarterback of Nick, I'm forgetting his last name. Simonek of Texas Tech.
Okay, yes. So let's look at them. Put those quarterbacks into the SEC that Alabama has to face.
How do they fare?
When we're looking at, Alabama has never had
Kenny Hill at TCU too.
And there you go. So all these guys. The Big 12 has quarterbacks. They've got them. Good quarterbacks, solid ones.
So you're saying how would they fare?
Move those quarterbacks, and I know the system would be different. It wouldn't be throw it every play as it is in the Big 12.
Got better run games than the SEC.
Look at what would be happening in the SEC if Alabama had to fare against Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph. We're talking a bit of a different game here. It's a closer game. Am I saying that Alabama loses? I'm not. I don't know, but we're talking tighter games. We're talking bigger plays by quarterbacks, but they've never had that. They've never had. I mean, look throughout the years. Is there have not been big time quarterbacks outside of some, the Cam Newtons and stuff like that were at Auburn and stuff. But we aren't looking at really big, huge, high-scoring, big playmaking quarterbacks up and down the SEC all the time. We're just not.
Let me put it this way, too. it doesn't have to be a quarterback like Baker Mayfield either that could help like an LSU knock off in Alabama, because think about it this way. A quarterback we talked about in the offseason that I can't remember what I said about him, but I think you praised him a little bit and you liked what he was going to bring to this team, Nick Fitzgerald with Mississippi State.
Yeah.
He was a quarterback that nothing flashy, but he was a veteran quarterback for that team. If he throws a little bit of a more accurate non-Blake Bortlesy throw into the end zone, and I say that because Blake Bortles loves to throw balls out of bounds, and even Allen Robinson would yell at him to throw the ball inbound so that he could catch it. If he throws the ball a little bit more accurate into the end zone, they win that game over Alabama.
Yeah.
And they had 2 shots, I believe, at the end of that game to try to knock off the Crimson Tide at home.
That was Alabama's
Mississippi State.
That was Alabama's closest game of the season outside of the national title game. I mean, that was their closest game of the season.
31-24. I mean, the closest one they had besides the national championship game was maybe the 27-19 game against Texas A&M.
But that one wasn't as...
That was probably, like, score-wise, that was probably the closest.
But I would still say what felt closer to me as a college football fan, it was definitely the Alabama-Mississippi State game where you're going, and I'm going, oh, crap, they're going to lose.
They could lose.
They are going to lose right now.
And the funny thing is, if they would have lost that game, it would have been like, great, we get to play Mercer, the cupcake game that we thought would have been the cupcake game before. Here's the thing, and this is off the rails a little bit. Could you imagine? Yeah, I know they won 56-0 after winning. Could you imagine how much they would have demolished Mercer if they lost that game?
78-0.
They would have came out and it would have been like Mercer would have just been like, we forfeit. We're not even playing this game. We're not like, we'll just give you the W because we don't want to hurt our own players.
Yeah.
Like, we know you are angry from losing that game. Any final thoughts on this before we move into some Texas football?
I think it's something to definitely monitor as the.
No, we're definitely going to, as I believe the SEC is going to be the first divisions that we hit with our previews.
It is, and it'll be interesting as the summer goes on and how the quarterback battles shake out, especially with 4 guys there and all capable, I'm sure. It'll be interesting to see what exactly happens because all of them, there's no more. No one has more pass attempts than the 39 that Burrow has. I think the next most is maybe 27. So it's really interesting. There's not a lot of combined experience there. So whoever takes it is probably going to have it and kind of be given the okay, go ahead. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below, what do you think of Joe Burrow? Keep on putting us on there. Joe Burrow's transfer to LSU. What do you think it means for LSU? Does he win the starting job? Who wins the starting job? And what does LSU do this season? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. But Brandon, let's end the podcast taking a look at the Texas Longhorns, or you like to say the Tejas Longhorns. Yes. And what we're looking at, I put this was on the back burner for a couple weeks. I hope it's not burnt by now. We kind of had it sitting there simmering on low on the back burner while we talked about other things, mainly the NBA draft last week. But what we're looking at is there's an article on not on MVP, on ESPN that was basically in year 2. Can Tom Herman, he's focusing on ending the Texas decade of losing. And the question I wanted to ask you is, will this year, 2018, be the year for Tom Herman and the Longhorns? Because just today, there was another article that Texas is drawing interest from Vegas to where they were originally underdogs in some of the early games. Now they're favorites against USC and against Oklahoma. So Vegas taking some interest in Texas. They're now favorites in games. Tom Herman looking to end the decade of losing. Will this be the year for Herman and the Longhorns?
I think this is the year that Texas starts to turn the corner again. I do. Since playing for the title in 2009, Texas is only 5 games above 500. Only 5 games above 500. I think that's crazy.
And that's with Mac Brown for a little bit, too.
That's nuts. So here's one of the things, is that Tom Herman, he admits that he bought into his own hype last year. He admits that he thought it was going to be easier to turn this program around in the first year, and then he realized, oh crap, this team still has a lot of really bad things going on. A lot of parts that are still broken.
4 total losses at Houston. 4. And that first year he walked into Houston, 13
wins.
won.
13 wins.
Almost went to a playoff if he would have won that one game, which I believe was a loss to Navy.
So here's how I kind of compare this in a way. This, to me, is similar to Jay Wright with Villanova basketball.
Okay. Jay
Wright with Villanova basketball, he comes in, they're doing their thing, they're doing well, then all of a sudden, they have a couple of years where they've got clunkers. They're not doing well. They had gotten off the beaten path. And he said the reason, when they finally got back to it, he said, we started playing Villanova basketball again. He said, people were coming here because they wanted to be here at Villanova. We were doing things the Villanova way. We had a culture. We reinstituted the Villanova culture. And he said, now people want to come here or they don't want to come here. They either want to come here because they want to be here, part of Villanova, part of not only basketball, but what we do here as a program, as people, everything like that, or they don't want to be a part of that. And I think that that's kind of what Tom Herman's instituting here. You either want to come here, play for Texas Longhorn football, and have an expectation that we are going to be better. We're going to play hard. We're going to work hard. We're going to be motivated. But it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to be expected to bust your butt every single day. And that's how we're going to be better. And I think that that type of mentality is going to get them to turn the corner. And after reading this article too, it sounds like a lot of things have been implemented, and they do believe, they feel, the coaching staff feels that even though they thought that they may have been there last season, they felt like this year, this spring, there was a meeting where the guys finally felt like they were having fun. The guys actually admitted, we're having a good time. We're enjoying this. And I think that now that they've bought in, I think that the talent is there. The talent is there. We saw glimmers of it last season with Sam Ehlinger. He came in and he played pretty well in some of the bigger games. He also had his moments of being a first-year quarterback, but I think that he had a lot of really good glimmers of hope what Texas football can be once again.
That is half of the battle. You know what the other half of the battle is? Who you're going up against. And the thing I look at and why I think that the Texas Longhorns could be in a prime position to do well this year, look at their losses last year. Except for the Maryland loss, look at the main losses last year. USC, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU. What do all of those teams have in common? They have one thing in common. Do you know what they all have in common? They all are not returning their quarterback from last
USC,
year.
Oklahoma.
Sam Darnold, no longer there. Baker Mayfield, no longer there. Mason Rudolph, no longer there. Kenny Hill, no longer there. Nick Semenek, no longer there. So to me, your half of it is true. Internally, we got to play up to what Texas football is. But I look at it, and of course, guys can step up for other teams, but Sam Darnold's not going to be there. Oh, wait, and that USC game is in Austin this year, so put Texas as the favorite. Then you also have TCU. Oh, you don't have Kenny Hill? Oh, and you're coming to our house. I'll take Texas in that game right now too. The Oklahoma one, neutral site, but no Baker Mayfield to me returning my quarterback. That could be a swing slightly into my favor. Then you also have Oklahoma State. Yeah, it's on the road. Texas Tech, it's on the road. Those will be tougher. To me, the tough games this year come Maryland, what are you going to do? Because last year was
51 points.
First game. The first game with Maryland was not good, but that was Tom Herman's first game. We weren't really, unless you were myself, weren't expecting huge things from Tom Herman. We weren't expecting 51 points in that game being scored by Maryland, but it kind of set the table of, okay, what do we need to work on?
And after that, I just want to jump in really quick, is that after that, Todd Orlando's defense actually was probably one of the most efficient defenses for the rest of the season. So they did get better in that front.
But this year, we don't want to see that again because, all right, we've seen a year with you. We have a little bit more concrete expectations. To me, the big matchup for them comes November 17th. What are you going to do against a Iowa State team extending their coach from last year, Coach Campbell, and that team who they knocked off Oklahoma last year? They played some of the big competition tough. They're a team that I'm looking to make a step this year. And for me, I feel like Oklahoma, the story with them will be what does Lincoln Riley do without Baker Mayfield? How does that team perform without Baker Mayfield? Oklahoma State, Coach Gundy always has someone step up, but when you lose your main wide receiver, and well, they lost two big wide receivers to the NFL, as well as Mason Rudolph, how is that offense going to do? Are they going to have the same guys being able to step up? TCU will be interesting. They're a well-coached bunch, but like I said, if you have questions at quarterback, I get nervous because that is the most important position. And for Tom Herman's group, they don't have that question at quarterback. They know it's going to be Shane, and that is he a guy that's going to be Sam Darnold level, Baker Mayfield level? Go ahead.
They don't.
Okay.
They don't. It's Sam Ellinger and Shane Buechele. It's a battle.
Okay.
It's a battle.
I'm saying I think that Buechele wins that battle. Maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
And I think you might be. I think a lot of people actually believe it to be Sam Ellinger because of what he did. It was going to be Sam Ellinger's kind of deal, except he got injured last year. He had, I think, the concussion. He was out with that, and then Buechele came in. And we've seen good things from both guys. We've also seen, mistakes, and that's why this quarterback competition is going to happen. We're going to see what happens over the summer. I think Ellinger has the leg up, but we'll see what happens.
Either way, any of those guys starting, I think it's better situations than any of the teams I listed.
And what's nice for Texas, too, is that they've got Trey Watson most likely at the running back spot. They return most of their wide receivers. They return a good portion of their offensive linemen. They're in a better spot, I think, than some of these other teams that we're going to be talking about in the Big 12.
And that's the thing. And for me, it's can you get past the West Virginias? Can you get past the Iowa States? Maryland's going to be a big one. They shocked you last year. I don't think anyone expected Maryland to be that good off the bat last year. And for Texas, I want to ask you this. If they win the Big 12 this year, do you think by, let's say, October, November, is there a chance we're talking Texas playoff? We're talking Texas and the college football playoff in the same sentence.
Well, it's...
Because if you win the Big 12, you have a shot.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much here, and just Tom Herman's year too. But I think that if Texas is able to have a good run here in the Big 12, and like you said, we're not going to be seeing, this is not going to be the Big 12 that we've seen the last 2-3 years. It's not, because these quarterbacks are no longer going to be here that dominated this Big 12. So it will be interesting, and maybe here's a wild comment. Are we going to be seeing towards the top? Are we going to be seeing Texas and Iowa State? Could we be seeing that? Two teams that, you could have said that the last 3 years, and people would have said, that's hysterical. But if that is happening, then Texas very much could take the Big 12. And yes, if you win the Big 12, if you win any conference, you have to at least say, could you be talking playoffs? You have to say that for any conference winner. You have to be saying that, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true because we've seen what has happened in the past. But Texas is in a spot, I think, better than others because they have things a little bit more figured out. Tom Herman is a great head coach. I think has these guys feeling like they can be winners now. And that's what's going to help, I think, propel this team this year. The talent's going to be huge. And whatever the Oklahomas, Oklahoma States, and TCUs are able to replace their guys with, and we'll be doing that dive later this summer to talk all about that in depth, it'll be interesting to see what they're able to bring to the table. Because just as we talk about Texas being in a pretty good spot, a lot of these teams that have been good for a long time, it's because they are stacked for years. Because they go out and they're good recruiters and they make sure that they have guys for the years after Baker Mayfield, for the years after Mason Rudolph.
And I'm glad you said the R word because that's what I was going to go at. Recruiting is, if you look at last year, Texas has a big recruiting class coming in. According to 247sports.com, they have the third best class from last year coming in. A total of 27 guys, 2 5-star recruits, 17 4-stars, and 8 of them are 3-stars. And those 2 5-star guys, I think 2 of the 5-star guys and definitely a 4-star guy. The 5-stars are safeties, so there's your backfield. One of the 4-stars for sure is a 4-star corner coming in. So I expect that defense to get infused with some young talent. Do I expect these guys to just compete right away? No, in football there's always a little bit of that learning curve coming in, especially for freshmen. It's not like college basketball where it's boom, one done, you're out, and we're pushing out the door at the end of the season. But with them having, they had the third best class. The only 2 that had better classes than them is Ohio State, who had 24-star recruits, 3 5-stars, and then there was no way that Georgia was going to get topped as the number 1. They had, out of the 26 kids coming in, 15 of them were 4-stars, 7 5-star recruits. So there's no way they were going to be kind of upended as that top spot. But the next best Big 12 team is Oklahoma. Do you want to take a guess at what number nationally Oklahoma was at? I'll give you a hint. It's still in the top 10.
9.
They were 9th. USC was 4, Penn State was 5, Alabama 6, Clemson 7, Miami 8, Oklahoma 9. To me, 3 to 9, that's a huge gap. I'm getting 2 5-stars, you get 1 5-star. I'm getting 17 4-stars, you're only getting 12. But you got 1 3-star more than me. They got 9, Texas had 8. I think that this recruiting class is going to be big, not just this year, but even if they don't, let's say, make the playoff this year. Let's say a team like, let me look at their schedule. Let's say in Oklahoma upends them, because I know Oklahoma fans that are watching this to kind of keep up on their opponent, they're going to say, well, but Ricky, you can never count anyone out in that Red River rivalry game. I'll give you that. A rivalry is a rivalry for a reason. You can never count one team out of that game. Anything is possible. So if they lose to an Oklahoma, they lose to an Oklahoma State. Hell, they even lose to an Iowa State later in the year. Just boom, upset happens any given Saturday, and they're not in the playoff picture at the end of the year. This recruiting class is just going to get better year 2. And then next year, I say by next year, either next year or the year after. I'm going to say next year for sure. At the beginning of next year, we're talking about Texas being a team we're looking for as a playoff team or as a potential playoff team.
I think you're right, and I think the reason why you have to say that is because if Texas continues to get these type of recruits, and you start to see that, the guys they got last year into this year and the year after, and then everyone that they continue to bring in, you start to see that development. Before long, they're in their sophomore season doing really well with Texas, and you continue to do that, continue to get these guys, recruit them, bring them in. Tom Herman being the good coach and I think recruiter that he is, will definitely continue to have success in that area. And we talk about quarterbacks. Tom Herman is a quarterback guy. He's a quarterback guru, and this is going to be a team that I don't think it's going to take long for them to take off with the quarterback position, and whoever ends up winning the job they are going to be very good because Tom Herman won't allow anything less.
Who do you think? Do you think it's going to be Sam or do you think it'll be Shane?
I think it's going to be Sam Ehlinger.
Okay.
I really do.
Yeah, for me,
for a while I thought it would have been Shane Buechele, but then Ehlinger came in and I think had a lot of good moments. Like I said, also had, you fumble at the goal line, you throw a late game interception. Things like that are going to happen when you're younger in your first year and everything like that. But I think ultimately it's going to be Ehlinger. Buechele, a lot of good things, but I think it's going to go to Sam.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like quarterback, to me, it doesn't matter which one they have back there. I feel like they could have either one back there, and it doesn't change the win-losses to me drastically. It's not like, oh, man, Sam Ehlinger's not in there. This is a huge loss for this team. I think the bigger thing is the offensive line.
Yeah.
And, like, for me, I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, they brought in a new offensive line coach from Auburn, Herb Hand. So the big thing is, I'm not quite sure. It's like I'm not on the side of like, oh man, this is the thing that like this is going to bring it over the edge having Herb Hand here. But if Coach Hand can kind of do enough with the offensive line to solidify it for either Sam or Shane, then that'll just be a positive for Texas. Because the two most important things for me is one, having the quarterback position locked down. Number two, I want that offensive line knocked down. Because what I want to do, well, not knock down, because I want them to block, but I want to have it locked in. Because it's kind of like I think the NFL with the Indianapolis Colts. I can have Andrew Luck all I want, but if I don't have good guys blocking for him, boom, he's injured. So, I mean, that to me is the two most important parts, is having that quarterback locked in, then having that offensive line locked in.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right, number one, because the offensive line is going to be the most important thing, because if you have a good offensive line, you don't even need to have the best quarterback. You just need to be able to have some time. And then, and I'm not saying that they don't have a good quarterback. Yeah. I'm just saying if you have an offensive line, it could help in a lot of different areas. And also it helps in the running game as well. So all those things are going to help Texas. I think, too, it helps that you're returning a number of your wide receivers who your quarterback has developed a relationship with. That's going to be a big thing for Tejas. So I think Texas is trending in the right direction. There's no way this team is not better than 7-6 this season. There's no way. They've got to be better than 7-6. I don't see them having a season this year where they're not.
So here's the thing I want to ask, and this is bringing a little bit of the rivalry into this. We're going to get into a lot more of this when we talk about this in our preview, but I just want your early thoughts here. The team that won the Big 12 last year, Longhorn fans, cover your ears, Oklahoma. Do you think, let's say Sam Ehlinger's the guy, do you think Oklahoma-wise right now has their answer in, because right now they're even thinking like they've got to replace Baker Mayfield, like I mentioned in the teams that have lost quarterbacks. Right now they have Kyler Murray, they have Austin Kendall. Let's say the guy who many people think is the front runner, the former starter at Texas A&M, Kyler Murray is the guy. If Kyler Murray starts at Oklahoma, does Oklahoma have then enough to, I'm going to say not compete, but combat Texas into, whoa, not so fast. You got to knock us off the top before you take our spot at the top of the Big 12.
I don't think so. I think you're looking at more of a level playing field. Okay. Honestly, it's nothing against the kid, but he's not Baker Mayfield.
Well, who is?
But that's
who's the number one pick in the NFL draft, Brandon?
And that's the thing, is that I'm also not saying, because I haven't really seen him play, and you haven't seen what he's going to be able to do for Oklahoma, but you have to go into that thinking the advantage is going to Texas, because they have a little bit more of a stable quarterback situation, where this guy has certainly been playing, I think, in more games and getting more snaps than the guy on the other side. So that's going to be the big thing there. I think it comes down to experience. Like we talked about with Burrow, over, going from Ohio State and heading over to LSU. We believe that he's going to win out because he's got a little bit more experience. He's coming from a really good system. And that's, to me at least, why Texas has to have the leg up in that category if you're just going from purely the quarterback position.
We saw him a little bit last year. We saw him in 7 games, but he only threw 21 passes last year. So with the way I saw it last year is with Baker Mayfield there, they put him in scenarios where he was going to be successful. 18 of 21 passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. But when he was at Texas A&M in 2015, because he sat out 2016 per transfer rules, in only 8 games, he had a 59.5 completion percentage, and he threw just over 120 attempts. And he had 5 touchdowns to 7 INTs. So to me, it's what are we going to see from a Kyler Murray if he is the starter? Are we going to see closer to what he was as a freshman? The more attempts you give him, the more interceptions he gets, not as many touchdowns he gets. Or are we going to see, and it was, it's a small sample size, but last year is the Kyler Murray that we have with the Oklahoma coaching staff. And for me, any of these teams that lost a quarterback, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, TCU, if they want to compete with Texas, they've got to find out who that guy is, and they got to find that guy fast and get him prepped to play Texas, because if you don't have that quarterback position solidified, Texas is going to roll over you. Well, maybe not roll, but they'll beat you by 2 scores if you don't have that quarterback solidified.
Yeah, that's to me that's the biggest thing right now. And that's why Texas has the leg up, because they have 2 guys, and they have 2 guys that have a lot more time and a lot more reps and a lot more experience than a lot more, I would say, valuable experience, because you're not just going in for over 120 attempts. You're not just going in for a couple of games where you throw the ball 21 times. You're playing these games. You're the starter. You're the guy, and you're facing some real situations. And I think that was really good last year for Ehlinger, where he, in the game against USC, yes, they end up losing that game, but I think that they came back and they did a good job of staying in that game, keeping it close. There were a number of games where I think that they kept it close and they made it exciting, and that was due in part to what Ehlinger was able to do for them.
And I know this is a Texas segment, but because I brought up Kyler Murray, the big question that could sway that Red River rivalry game too is, I'm looking at an article right now. Guess how high he has just gotten on the MLB draft rankings. He is now 21st overall on the Fangraphs board for that. And I think it's Keith Law at ESPN said if he'll commit to baseball full time, there's a potential above average everyday center fielder for a team with some patience. And then Kyle Peterson, who's another college baseball analyst, said, from a scout standpoint, when you look at Kyler Murphy, you see potential and a ton of it. The power potential is there. You can't teach power. You can't teach speed, blah, 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 blah. The point is, if Kyler Murray gets drafted in the MLB, chooses the baseball route, that then affects how the Oklahoma-Texas game plays forth. So then there's that, a little bit of just another layer onto what can happen with Texas opponents. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this podcast?
I was just going to say to that point, too, even if he doesn't go the baseball route and he keeps the football route, are you fully invested in football?
Exactly.
Or are you still thinking baseball? Whereas the knock against Jared Goff, are you fully invested in football here, Jared? You sure you want to play? And, he ended up coming out and basically telling everyone to go F off because, he does. He's invested. But I think that's an interesting point you bring up.
But let's be completely honest. If I'm Kyler Murray, there's a good chance he plays this year, because even if I'm drafted in the draft this year, spring training ain't till March. Season ends in January. So, I can play the football season, and as soon as I'm done with football, all right, I was drafted, I'm going to the MLB. Yeah. Unless there's some stipulation to where he can't. But I mean, I don't see why unless after you're drafted, you then have to choose, I'm a baseball player, and adios, I'm no longer a college student. You can't go there unless there's rules against that. But an MLB person would have to tell me that. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think about the Texas Longhorns and Tom Herman. Will the 2018 season be their year? And be the year that Tom Herman turns everything around. Also, a little housekeeping here at the end of the podcast. If you want to help support us, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluable-podcast. If you want to be like any of our patrons that have come on podcast, make sure to check out the $10 tier. Also, we have a store link down below in the description. That's where you're going to get your MVP t-shirt. Make sure to check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. That's where you get everything for MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, go and rate the Primetime Podcast and all the MVP podcasts on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. It really means the world to us. If you go, give us that 5-star and then type a little something about why people should listen to the podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening either on Blog Talk services or podcast services, Blog Talk Radio and podcast services around the world. And thank you guys for watching on YouTube. But as always, have a good day, everybody.